والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Last week when in Sahih Muslim we started reading from
الطهارة الغسل
from كتاب الغسل. This next hadith is one of the two most important hadith in the description of how the Prophet ﷺ actually made ghusl. And in the Quran, there's no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give us a detailed description of ghusl for example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the ayah we call ayat al-wudu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, what is the ayah? إن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة
فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين
وإن كنتم مرضى أو على
وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا. If you are junub, if you're in a state of janaba, then purify yourselves. And apparently that word tahharu in Arabic, it means to wash your body. Apparently that's the linguistic meaning of the word. So a detailed explanation is not required. But in this hadith that we're going to read, and in the hadith of, there's another hadith there by Aisha, there is the most detailed description of how the Prophet ﷺ made ghusl. This hadith is narrated by another one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, Maymuna, and her name is Maymuna. Maymuna bint al-Harith. And she, who is she related to? By marriage.
By marriage?
Yes.
I think Ja'far ibn Abi Talib or?
No.
Khalid ibn Walid.
No. She is the sister-in-law of one of the relatives of the Prophet ﷺ. Meaning she's the sister of the wife of one of the relatives of the Prophet ﷺ.
Sister?
Relative. Yes. She's the sister of the wife of Al-Abbas. Radiallahu anhu. The wife of Abbas was named al-Fadl. al-Fadl. And Maymuna is the wife of the sister of al-Fadl.
So she's the aunt of Ibn Abbas.
The aunt of Ibn Abbas, the Khala. The Prophet ﷺ married her, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the 8th year after Hijrah. The Prophet ﷺ married Maymuna radiallahu anha. And this hadith, she described how the Prophet ﷺ made ghusl. عن ميمونة رضي الله عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قالت أدنيت لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم غسله من الجنابة فغسل كفيه مرتين أو ثلاثا ثم أدخل يده في الإناء ثم أفرغ به على فرجه وغسله بشماله ثم ضرب بشماله الأرض فدلكها دلكا شديدا ثم توضأ وضوءه للصلاة ثم أفرغ على رأسه 3 حفنات كل حفنة ملء كفيه ثم غسل سائر جسده ثم تنحى عن مقامه ذلك فغسل رجليه ثم أتيته بالمنديل فرده. Maimuna radiallahu anha said, the Prophet, she described how the Prophet ﷺ made the ghusl. She said, I brought to him the water for him to make a ghusl from the janaba. And she described what he did. She said he washed his hands, his palms 3 times. She said 2 or 3 times. That apparently she meant that he spilled water over he poured water over his hands to wash them without actually taking from the container. ثم أدخل يده في الإناء ثم أفرغ به على فرجه وغسله بشماله. Then he took water out of the container and poured water over his in private parts and washed his private parts with his left hand. Then she say, then he put his he hit the ground with his hand and wiped it strongly with his hand. Then she said, ثم توضأ وضوءه للصلاة. Then he made wudu like he was going to make salah. In this hadith, this is abbreviated. She just said that he made wudu like he's going to make salah. That's what Aisha said as well, radiallahu anha, that he made wudu like he was going to make the salah. In another wording of this hadith, narrated by Maimuna, she actually spelled out what the Prophet ﷺ did, and she said he did everything except the last part of wudu. What is the last part of wudu? Washing your feet. So she said he did all of the wudu except washing his feet. ثم أفرغ على رأسه 3 حفنات كل حفنة ملء كفيه. Then she said, then he poured 3 handfuls of water over his head. And she said each handful was a double handful full of water. Then he washed the rest of his body. Then she said, and this makes more sense when you keep in mind the other narration when she spelled out that he made entire wudu except for washing his feet. She said, then he went to the side to another place other than the place he had been standing in, and he washed his 2 feet. Then she said, then I brought him a mindil, or another narration, a khirqa, which is like a towel or a rag, something to dry himself with. She said, you're faradda. In another narration, she said that he didn't want it, and he just shook the water off with it, or with his hands. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this hadith, Maimuna gave a detailed description of how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made ghusl, and the ghusl is simple. In the Prophet ﷺ, she's describing something that she saw the Prophet ﷺ do in his house. We don't know that the Prophet ﷺ actually went out and made a point of teaching people in public to do exactly the way he did it here. But we are blessed to have this information relayed to us by his wife, Maimuna radiallahu anha. And the minimum for making ghusl, what's necessary is to wash the entire body, is described in the Quran. The description doing it exactly the way the Prophet ﷺ did is an additional blessing. And when what the Prophet ﷺ did, and it's as if it's inspired from the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ did that, everything in the ayah from Surah Al-Ma'idah. He washed all of those body parts, and then he did like when kuntum junuban fatahharu, as if that were an extra command. And he applied the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah from the beginning to the end. Now, she said that first he washed his hands a few times. He poured water, washed his hands a few times before he put them in the container. And the purpose of this, wallahu, is so as not to put a dirty hand in the water container. And the Prophet ﷺ, where at that time they didn't have flowing water, so the Prophet ﷺ, they have to use water in containers. So the purpose of this is obviously not to soil the container. Then she said before the first thing he cleaned was the private area, and after he did that, she said that he used dirt to wipe the hand that he had used to clean the private area. If that's takes the place of soap. Then she said that he made the wudu like he made for salat. In another narration, she said everything except for washing his feet. Then she described that he simply took 3 handfuls of water and he put them over his head 3 times. And apparently, with the water from that, and he spread that, the water from those 3 times, what he spread over the rest of his body to complete the ghusl. And this is obviously the Prophet is not using a lot of water. And we know from this narration and another narrations that the approximate amount of water that the Prophet ﷺ used for making ghusl was how much?
Sa'.
A sa'. What is a sa'?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. What is a sa'?
Gallon.
No.
It's like 3 of handful.
Yeah.
4. 4 double. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not 100% sure. I think it's a sixth of a gallon. No, a sixth of a gallon.
6 of a gallon.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm not 100% sure about
For
that.
wudu or ghusl?
For ghusl, a sa'. And that's 4 double handfuls of water, which is, it really is more than enough if you're not using running water. It's more than enough to actually cover an average person's entire body. And this is keeping in mind that the Prophet ﷺ had long hair. Then she said that she brought him a cloth to dry himself with, and he didn't want it, and he turned it down. And in one wording, he started using the drying himself with his own hands. This wording in the Hadith, some scholars have said that based on this, that you shouldn't dry yourself with a cloth after making the ghusl or wudu, and some scholars have said the exact opposite, based on the same part of the Hadith. How did they get two opposite understandings from the same sentence? Yes?
Like, are there 2 different variations?
No.
No, I think it looks like it was his habit.
Allah Ta'ala.
So she prepared the cloth for him, and then this time he said,
Allah Ta'ala. Exactly. Well, some scholars, but that's obvious. They have said that it shows that it's preferable, or it was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ not to dry himself with the cloth because he turned it down. But then some other scholars have said that actually may show the opposite. Just the fact that she brought him the cloth indicates that that is the